Allegiance will be led by Bob Heinzelman with the invocation following from the mayor.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Father God, you are the beginning and the end. Your power is beyond imagination, with the ability to not only create a universe, but to know each intimate detail to the point that no sparrow falls from the sky without your knowing. In your knowledge, you know us better than we know ourselves, and with all our flaws, your grace alone is sufficient for our salvation. We thank you for your many gifts of the day, including your daily allowance of your overwhelming love, your daily opportunity to serve by and through you, and so much more. We certainly are beneficiaries of your graciousness, and for all that you are, we give thanks. Father, we acknowledge all that we have comes by and through you. You lead us to your will. When we turn a blind eye to your calling, you remind us of the opportunity to be a part of your eternal family. Nowhere can we go you have not been and that you are not there. Father, it is only when we turn to you in prayer that we can love as we should, pray without ceasing, to work to your ends, to reshape a world stunted by anger, contempt, disdain, greed, hatred, intolerance, self-importance, and individual pursuit of personal lust in support of evil. Father, please help us to remain faithful to your call, to act for the common good, to show your graciousness to those we meet, to demonstrate kindness even in the face of torment, and to always act with the self-control available through you. Finally, we call on you to share with the many public servants here this evening your patience, wisdom, and judgment on each of the items before us this evening. And may our thoughts, words, and deeds be only those that you would have us pursue. Please continue to protect, preserve, and prosper our community, state, and nation. Amen. We didn't start early. We started right on time. That's the official clock. Okay, we have one citizen to be heard. MJ Smoot, 101 Chavano Drive. MJ, if you would give your full name and your address.
Good evening, MJ Smoot, 101 Chavano Drive. And I'm speaking on 6.3 and 6.4 on the approval of the environmental friendly parking concept. As I look through the charts and graphs, I see that it's 82,000 is one option, 16,000 is the next option, but I'm going to go for an option that is not on the packet, and that is do nothing. The same thing that many of us voted to do on the Muni track. So it's Texas, everybody parks in a field, the event's over, and nothing is nonetheless disturbed. That's what I recommend that this council do, is do nothing. And then going on to 6.4, consider hiring a firm to conduct a review of the city manager. I will speak against that. It's a total waste. Bill always gets great reviews, so take that $2,000, just kick it into his pay. Save the survey, save all of that nonsense. Back to the parking lot for just a moment. Since that low figure is 16,000, I would like to see that 16,000 go to a plan to prevent the 41% of falls that happen in homes in Chavano Park. That is one of the largest things that is in every single packet on the, happens to be on the fire department, but I'm sure that many entities could come together and hire, I don't know, hospice agency or someone that could come in here and really teach the citizens to remove traps in their homes, or some assessment, some assistance to help them to how to avoid those falls. I'm sure that many of those falls do result in medical issues, and I would like to see that figure come down versus other figures increased. So those are the only two options I'm speaking on. I have a lot of other thoughts, but I'll save those for some other time. Thank you.
Thank you. Which brings us to item number 4. City Council comments. Mike Colmere.
Good evening. Thank you for coming. Howdy, thanks so much for coming out.
Bob?
Good evening. I just want to remind everybody on April 21st, the Arbor Day, Earth Day, and specifically the recycling efforts that we're undertaking again this year. We've hired a new company. They are, I think, going to be excellent. We are going to be taking some new items this year, batteries. We're also going to be taking light bulbs, and there'll be a list of acceptable items. We're still honing in on the exact amount of boxes that can be shredded, so we'll communicate that, but it'll allow everybody to bring boxes of documents that they can shred. Is it 8? Okay, 8. I was just between 6 and 10, but I didn't want to throw that number out until we had. So 8 boxes, which is quite a bit. So please bring them up, and we'll recycle. My son, Truett Heinzelman, and I will be manning the recycling effort that morning. But I also want to ask that if you have any kids in the neighborhood that are looking for service hours, or grandkids, or anyone that would like to come help, please ask them to get in touch with myself or Truett, and we'll get them signed up and put them to work that morning.
Thank you. Michelle?
Thank you for coming, and everybody remember April 7th is the annual garage sale day. So if you want to have a garage sale at your house, remember to sign up. Thanks for coming.
Mike?
Good evening, thanks for coming. A reminder that the Neighborhood Watch Candidates Forum will be on the 5th, and I have forgotten when the women's 10th, that's what I thought. Invite you to come out and hear the candidates, get to meet your neighbors and engage in Democracy 101. Thanks.
I normally do not exercise the privilege of speaking during the council comments section. We omitted an item, I omitted an item, a proclamation for the Breast Restoration Advocacy and Education Coalition Foundation, or the BRAVE Foundation. We had a reception with them in Chavano Park at the Bexar County Medical Society building last week, recognizing their 5th anniversary BRAVE Day. BRAVE is an organization that works with women in all decisions that are made following breast cancer. And so it may be a decision to do nothing, it may be a decision for flaps, it may be a tissue move, it may be an implant. These ladies, this group, the doctors that work with them are making some amazing strides for the women in this community and through our state and nation. And I lifted them up that day. Christina Grogan is one of the founders of the group. Christina lives right down the road on Fawn Drive, an amazing advocate in so many ways. And so if you see Christine, please thank her for all the work that she's doing for women concerning breast reconstruction. Which brings us to item number 5, presentation, comments, and announcements. City-sponsored Arbor Day, April the 21st. Rondi, please come down.
Bob talked about our electronics and batteries and household documents, so I can skip that. Thank you. It's going to be a super duper day. That's all I can say. There's going to be several food vendors. We have a fantastic kids area. We've got pony rides, face painting, crafts, several different crafts, and a bouncy house from the fire department with a little education thrown in. So kids are going to be well represented. There's a costume contest, and this is going to be exciting for me because I'm looking forward to see how can dress up as a raptor in a costume contest. So that's going to be fun for me too. We will have the awarding of the Blackman Elementary poster contest that day, our annual city tree planting, tool sharpening, bring your hedge clippers and pruners and whatever. There's a slight fee, but I tell you, that man is fantastic about sharpening them. You won't need them sharpened again till next year. Does a really good job. Free stuff. Let me tell you about the free stuff. We've got T-shirts, we've got Fiesta medals, and we've got trees. Lots of trees to give away. We've had a bunch of trees donated to us. When they're gone, they're gone. So I would suggest if you want a T-shirt, medals, and a tree, that you get there at 10 o'clock when the doors open. We will have several educational talks going on here in the City Hall chamber, everything from updates for Martin Marietta to Arbor, what you can do with trees, all kinds of fun stuff. But what you need to come for is the highlight of the whole deal. You're going to get to see raptors from Last Chance Forever, such as bald eagles and hawks and all kinds of neat things, and they will be in cages for you to talk at. They will have education about them, and they will actually be flying around the area and coming back. So you can see how these beautiful animals interact with us all. So as they used to say, y'all come.
Wonderful.
10 to 2.
Okay, Rodney, why don't you stay up here? I'm going to give you the proclamation for the Arbor Day, Earth Day. I would like to acknowledge that Mike Colmer, Mike Simpson, and I often are considered to look like old buzzards. So, you know what they look like somewhat. It's just what kind of exterior apparel we put on for our feathers. So,
Does that mean which one of y'all is going to dress up like a bald eagle?
Ronnie, I'm going to ask you to accept this proclamation on behalf of the city of Chavano Park. Whereas Arbor Day started in 1872 when J. Sterling Morgan called on farmers and homesteaders to replenish the tree population. By observing Arbor Day, we emphasize the importance of beautifying our town through landscaping and trees as we serve as the trustees for future generations. And whereas since 1970, when like-minded groups of Americans brought environmental protection to the forefront, Earth Day helps support environmental programs, rekindle public commitment, and build community activism. And whereas the city mayor and city council of the city of Chavano Park, Texas, hereby encourage our individuals, businesses, and civic and service associations to participate in tree planting and cleanup events, to participate in the city's Arbor Day, Earth Day activities on Saturday the 21st, April the 21st, to recycle and celebrate nature, and to support efforts promoting awareness of the value of trees in our environment. Now therefore be it proclaimed, I, Mayor Werner, and the City Council of the City of Chavano Park hereby proclaim April 21, 2018 as Arbor Day, Earth Day in the City of Chavano Park. Encourage community enhancement projects such as tree and shrub planting, litter cleanup, and other environmental work efforts. And highlight that the City of Chavano Park was designated as a Tree City USA by the Arbor Day Foundation and administered by the Texas Forest Service. Ronnie, thank you so very much. Our next item is to recognize Julie Singer for her Presidential Spirit Award. Julie couldn't be here this evening, so I'm going to ask without objection that we postpone item 5.3 until our next meeting. There being no objection, we'll proceed to item 5.4, introduction of new finance director, Brenda. I'm assuming that you're going to introduce Brenda, though. Brenda Morey.
I am. I'm pleased. Go ahead and stand up, Brenda. Yay. So, yeah, Brenda was here last time, as you guys approved her nomination. Thank you, Brenda. You can sit down now. But I failed to actually publicly acknowledge her and do that, and I want to put it on the agenda to work through that. And we're so excited to have her. I think she's the perfect fit to the team that we're building. She's very competent. She originally comes, and her family comes from Wisconsin, where she got a degree, was a CPA for a long time, then the family moved down to Texas, and she's been doing accounting work ever since then. Did not reestablish a CPA here, but has all those skill sets. She's been working with the Bear Bulverde Volunteer Fire Department on a regular basis for the last number of years. We've had a great transition. She prepared the financial reports in your packet today, along with some help from our interim. But she's really picked up very rapidly on ENCODE and is familiar with government accounting and has a way ahead, and we're really excited to have you here. So thanks for coming with us.
Okay, that brings us to item 6.1, discussion, action, review of police manning and organization. Chief Lacy?
Good evening, Mayor, council members. I was asked just to give you a quick overview since it's been almost a year since we made our changes to the department. We did that last April when I brought you a 6-month review of the agency after I came on board. So in your packet, you sort of saw an overview of that. Everything is going great. We had a phenomenal crime reduction last year. I hope to keep us, we probably won't have that big of a reduction again because then we'd almost be into nothing. But we are working to keep that. Some of that is the different styles that we're doing, more time in the neighborhoods looking for the bad guys. The 2 additional officers, of course, put 2 more sets of eyes out there. We will continue to monitor as an agency for you call load as far as how many calls per year we get in, how long it takes us to make those calls, and sometime in the future, if needed, we'll come back to you with an idea of any additional staff we might be looking to do. Everything that you've given us in this last year, we greatly appreciate and has been very helpful. The 2 new personnel, the new equipment that we added, the night vision equipment that we've added, all has tied in to allowing us to do more with the amount of personnel we have out there. So unless somebody has a specific questions, it pretty well covers itself in the notes.
We're going to open up for questions from the council members. Does anybody have any questions or comments, concerns? Mike?
Chief, is there still stuff that you need that we need to provide you, resources that we haven't gotten around to yet, or?
There are some more items that I will look at. They're not critical to get today, but we'll look for some items in my new budget. Again, not critical things, but things that will make our policing and our ability to do that in the most best way possible for our staff too. But I'm very happy with what we have right now.
And then a couple other questions. How are the cameras working out? Are you finding that their integration is working well?
They have, with all car camera and body camera systems, there's always a few hiccups. The company is very responsive to any questions we've had or any of that work. Any video data is very intensive as far as size, so it does cause my detective an enormous amount of time. If you have 3 officers at a scene and they're there for an hour, we have to download all of those. So there's 6 cameras. There's 3 cars and there's 3 body cameras. So she has to download all of that into a file and then transfer those files to CDs to take to the district attorney. And unfortunately, our district attorney, every time we take them down, loses them. So we make 2 sets because we just as last week, a week ago, we filed a case on Friday afternoon. Monday morning, they called and says, we need the video. And we had where they signed for it. And they said, well, we've lost it. We need another copy. So my future endeavors with our district attorney will be, we've surrendered it to you. We have your proof. We can go to the judge and say, you lost the evidence. But of course, we've retained the originals. So I'm proposing that Mr. LaHood pay us for the additional copies. because it does mean we then have to burn another set. But that's just typical. It's not just here in Bexar County. We work through all of those, but it does cause a little pressure sometimes. But no, we're very happy with them. The quality is very good with the cameras. And we do review those as required. My staff reviews them to make sure that everybody's doing the things they need to do. They have to log that. That's a best practices standard, actually. We would have had it anyway, but it's a Texas best practices, which is one of the things we just completed. So.
Would you give us an update on the best practices recognition for the department?
We passed our exam of all 168 standards. They came in over the February 14th date. They were here the 13th, 14th, and 15th. They did a 2.5-day comprehensive evaluation of the policies, talking to staff. About a week later, we received our notification that we've received that standard. So as of the date they posted it, we are a Texas recognized agency. We're agency 146, I believe. We're only 146 out of 2,265, I believe, agencies in the state. A lot of agencies don't go for it.
Exactly, Mayor Warren.
And in fact, I will be leaving from here and going to Galveston to the Chiefs Conference because Wednesday I have to be there to formally accept it, but they will come here in April at the council meeting and present our recognition certificate at the council meeting. So you'll actually have a short presentation there for them to tell you about it.
Very good, thank you. Michelle?
So how is the new electronic security stuff working?
It works.
How's it going with people? Are they happy? Are they sad? Is it
We
having
haven't had
problems?
no issues have come up to me.
Okay.
They let me through the door when I went through this
Yeah,
evening,
me
so.
too. Just wondering if there'd been any feedback, good
No.
or bad.
No, we haven't had any feedback from somebody having a problem with it. If they haven't brought it to my attention.
Okay.
We used it in
mostly
court. We had it in court, and we have different levels of what we can do that I've discussed with him. We're putting the final touches to that. I won't get into the in-depth of it, both for time and because it's a security-related issue. If it's something we need to do, I'll talk to you personally about it later or in an executive session, but we don't want to give our
No.
security notification secrets out. Got to keep secret.
Bob?
Chief, the speed trailer that we purchased, I know it's out quite a bit, and I see you guys moving it quite a bit. So I have two questions for you. One is, I know we were able to access data from that and be able to utilize that data for various reasons to see, average speeds and, how many vehicles and all that. Are we using that information, and is that something we can see maybe in a report in the next month or two?
We can. We look at it each time it's been put out to see if there's any anomalies going on. But it's not something, unless we see a problem, we've tracked. Because if there is a problem, then we put staff over there. Like right now, it's on De Zavala facing eastbound. So when we pull that in and download it, if we see that the majority of the cars have been speeding in excess, then that will be a position we would put folks on. When we've had specific requests in areas, we'll do it and then do a report on it. But
For example, I know a year or two ago, I brought up the early morning rush hour school traffic, and there was a significant amount of speeding on those, and we started putting the trailer down there. I just wondered if there were trends that show those being better or worse than in the last year. And then the other part of that is, do you feel like with resources that Mr. Simpson brought up, would it be of interest to look into a second trailer? I'll throw that out for discussion.
my personal knowledge using the trailers, and I had one in both of my last agencies, so I've been around them for about 25 or 30 of the last 36 years. They do provide a purpose. They're not totally accurate because, like any radar, if an 18-wheeler is going up Military and he's going 30, and a little Miata is driving at 50, it's going to get the truck. So you're gonna see the Miata going 50 flying down the road. We're gonna read the truck. If it gets down to wanting to really look for numbers, like a traffic count, then there's some different equipment that would typically be through a traffic or a public works department. The traffic counters with the pneumatic tubing that can give a more accurate reading on that. But we do monitor, if you know a specific area, like for the school, if there's a problem on a certain road, if it's our roadway, we can do. My tough thing for, say, the elementary school would be if someone says, well, I think they're speeding on 1604 Service Road. It's not in our city. I don't have authority to be on that road for it. I'd have to have San Antonio check it. We could stand off to the side and just see cars, but we can't take any action upon it. But we can on Military and De Zavala. And we do try to move it to the places that we know we have some issues. And then we even move it into the neighborhoods when we get some specifics for them. What I have found is it's usually not a high count. If someone thinks there's a lot of speeders on their residential street, it's not more than a couple of percent. And unfortunately, most of the ones we catch or find or really pull over are residents from that street. So, you know, but we deal with it all there. But for now, I think one trailer is plenty for us. If I thought truly that we needed one, I certainly would come and ask. My manager here will tell you, I don't have a problem asking for things. I just, I don't think I would look at that right now for that. I'd rather put it towards maybe another effective way to count traffic than that.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Mayor, I just want to say,
Bill?
actually, Chief has been brief, but I just want to brag on him a little bit. He actually did a deep dive into the organization, including the manning, the hours, and the shift, the number of shift hours and various proposals. Actually, it's been a 6-month project, and he's got his sergeants involved, his lieutenants, brought other people involved the best practices. And so while he made no recommendation for changes, I want to assure you that he has really done a deep dive into potential options, and he's looking for that, you know, that justification for and the reasons for buying. But you know, the employment that he's put in effect this last year has been successful, but he's really done a good job, and I commend him for that.
Thank you, Bill. Okay, with that, thank you very much, Chief. And we'll proceed to item 6.2, discussion action developing a city slogan. Bill?
Yes, Mayor, Council. As you know, we developed objectives during the budget year for the FY 17-18. One of the objectives is to adopt an official city slogan. So I'm just going to address some options for tonight and see where we go from that. I sent an email out to City Council, which kind of outlined that in advance. I've got various reactions from, I don't think we need a city a slogan, or let's kick it to the citizens and let's form a committee, various options. But here's something that I might propose to you, and then, you know, potentially there is a timeline, and how you go about doing it would be up to you. But you could select a potential slogan subcommittee, either of citizens or of council members tonight, to help neck this down so it's not, you know, the council working it all at once. Our proposal, and really Curtis and Zena and I put this together, would be to do a survey where we surveyed the citizens and get open-ended recommendations from them, and then to neck those recommendations down into 4 or 5 slogans that would then survey specifically those slogans and use that input to then bring in front of the entire city council. So in this situation, if you chose to choose a subcommittee, the subcommittee's role would be simply to take the 20 or 30 suggestions and neck it down to 4 or 5. Then the survey would go out to the citizens. We'd get direct input and go from there. Kind of the timeline would be to survey that in May, and then be able to present in the June city council meeting, and then possibly during the 4th of July announcing that, if that was what you wanted to do. We looked at some other city logos. We had some initial ideas initially, and then lo and behold, we ran across an advertisement from Chavano Park from the 1983 era, in which there was a brochure from Denton Communities, and they had a slogan, Chavano Park, a community of country estates. So the more I see it, the more I kind of like that. But anyway, it's City Council's objective. We're here to support it. There's a number of options, and so I'll kind of pause and see what your thoughts are, and then we'll have a dialogue, and we can go from there.
Okay. So, Bill, I think you said 2 things. Number one, getting citizens involved possibly in some type of committee, but you didn't give us a time frame for the appointment. Was that before the survey process started or after the survey process started?
I would think you need to appoint it, you either need to appoint it tonight or establish rules in which it's appointed in the next week or 2, so that we can then proceed forward.
Okay.
But the first thing would be an open call for data, says, hey, we're doing a slogan, and we want your ideas. And then the subcommittee would actually say, okay, I got 30 submissions, we like these 5, let's survey these 5.
Okay.
But there may be another way to do it, that's just my thoughts.
If the council members each wanted to appoint somebody to a committee, would they have to do that tonight, or could they go to people in the community and select people in the community to make sure that there's availability and then come back to you a week from now instead of having to name them at tonight's meeting?
I think if you gain consensus and you passed a motion to be able to do that, then a week from now, you could designate a representative to represent each council member.
Okay. Okay.
'Cause, yeah.
We're going to open up for discussion. Do we have any discussion? Michelle?
Well, you know what my thoughts were. I mean, I thought we should just put it in the newsletter, survey the residents, see if they have thoughts. I wasn't excited about country estates because now we don't, everything isn't a country estate. We have garden homes and villas, and that doesn't really apply. But I was all for making it into something that we can start with the citizens and get them to give their input, and then we can have a subcommittee after that of citizens and/or council. I didn't care one way or the other.
Bob?
Yeah, I like those ideas. I also thought that getting the citizens and having the survey, I think, is important. I think that would be certainly having the citizens give their input, whether it's kids, students, whatever, would be really, I think, neat to see what they came up with. I would like to suggest we have a tree committee already in place, and to me, it might be something that, although it's a little bit out of their scope, it might be something that the tree committee could act as the committee that looks at the surveys and makes that decision. We've got a great group of diverse people on that committee that could take those suggestions and utilize folks that we have in place, unless we just want to create a brand new committee for it. And I don't have a problem either way. I'm just suggesting that we do have a committee in place. I like the survey going out. I just don't think, we spent a lot of time over the last several years putting the mission statement together and what Chavano Park's all about. I like the Tree City USA designation, if we could, somehow incorporate that. But I don't think this needs to be rocket science. I don't think we need to spend a lot of staff time and a lot of effort into it. I think it could be fun and useful, but let's not take it too far.
Going back to your question on your recommendation on the tree committee, would the planning and zoning be the more appropriate one, because you brought in the town plan, and the planning and zoning commission is the one that's been instrumental in the town plan, which has been something of our branding as a community, has been done by council and the planning and with recommendations from the planning and zoning commission. Just an observation. Mike?
Well, I was kind of saying the same thing. We have these committees in place. Why don't, if we're gonna do something, why don't we try and pull a committee from the existing committees? Maybe use all of them. Selections from the WAC, P&Z, Tree Committee, all of those, and work something up from that. I think it needs to come from the people. I don't think we need to do it internally or from staff. I think it needs to come from the people. I don't really care when I don't think we need one. I mean, it's okay. I think it's the kind of thing that a lot of times can get, depending on how on the slogan you come up with, can, be turned into a joke. People can make jokes out of it. If you're not careful, you gotta be very careful about, what rhymes with things in your slogan. I've seen it happen before, but that's what I would think would be, we have the P&Z, we have the committees in place, let them do it and see what they can come up with, but bring it from the people mainly, get the input from the people through a survey or questionnaires or however.
Okay. Anybody else have any thoughts before we kind of try to bring the thoughts together? Mike?
I think Alderman Heinzelman had a great idea. Tree committee, that, as far as I know, is the most diverse group of citizens involved in the in organized. So I would be in support of that.
Okay. Mary Ann?
Is the P&Z committee, with respect to town plan, is all of the surveying done? It's interesting that the issue wasn't maybe put to a survey already. Is it already done? Have they already done everything that they're going to do?
Well, the components of the town plan, those surveys have already been done. Frankly, you probably bring up a good point. That wasn't part of the old town plan, and so as we went to revise the town plan, it wasn't on our radar screen, and so it can be part of. We talked about vision and objectives. That probably would have been an appropriate place.
And I'm not saying to go back and do any of that. I think the Survey Monkeys are one way to gain input. I would kind of echo along with Alderman Colmere's comments about you don't want to get it mired down. You come up with a slogan, you present it to the people, give them an opportunity to weigh in. One way we do that in other matters is having a couple of public hearings, and not just at a regular meeting, but publicizing the fact that we're having a public hearing about a town slogan. If you're interested in coming, come, give your input, and be done with it. At the end of 2 hearings, then everybody's had an opportunity, and you're good to go.
Okay, thank you, Mary Ann. Okay, so I think the first part of the consensus that we need to reach to formulate this is which group are we going to bring together? And we've had kind of 2 recommendations, a group of all the committees, and then the recommendation of the tree committee specifically. Bob, I'm going to let you speak back to that because you're the one that lifted up the tree committee, and I don't know if you considered the other committees to be a part of the process.
Citizens input and do a survey.
Well, I would say that I think either one of them would be reasonable. I agree with you with the town plan and all that with the P&Z. I just think we have a lot on their plate. Not that this would be a significant amount of time, but it's certainly, they've been involved in the town plan. But it seems like to me, just the tree committee is a fun group of people. They're creative. They're very eager to do things for the city, and it just seems like something that I think they could handle.
Do you think that they can handle Arbor Day and this process through February, or would we need to push this back to May?
I don't think there's a significant, time constraint on this, in my opinion. I think we could do it. They can get Arbor Day done in April. We can do I would say we do the survey through SurveyMonkey and get some responses in, let the committee then review those at their next meeting, and then propose the top however many, and we can go that route. I don't know that I would agree with the public hearings because we just don't get great turnouts for those. And I'm just not sure on a topic like this how many people would actually show up. But if we want to do those in addition to the survey, we certainly could. I mean, anything would help.
Bill, how would we get the idea of a survey out to our citizens in a timely manner? We're past our deadline for publication. We're probably already going to print for the April newsletter. So how do we get this out to the citizens?
Yeah, this is relatively easy. I mean, we have multiple things we can do. First of all, there's the iInfo, there's the SurveyMonkey, there's Nextdoor, there's passing it to all the citizens that we have. There's Arbor Day, which we could have a table there, and the tree committee could then just have some information booth there. Mm-hmm. And then we can get it also in the May Roadrunner, which would still be plenty of time for some recommendations to get. And so if it's in the May 1st Roadrunner, yeah, it might not be 2 months' time, but you're going to get a few weeks of notice. And if the tree committee or the committee says, hey, you know what, I want more time, then you just push it back. The timeline, I agree, is not something can be done. It can also be, it's relatively easy to do a public hearing, either at one of the tree committees, because that's just posting a notice and allowing people to come publicly talk about it. I can put a notice on the marquee, especially if we get the marquee that's electronic, and Curtis is not here, but I know that we've initiated those steps, and we will be able to maximize our ability to communicate just with those people driving by. And
Okay, cool. So Mary Ann, Mike, Colmere, Michelle, are y'all applying with the tree committee being the group that's going to push this forward? We have a consensus on that?
I feel bad putting marketing for a town and a community on any one group, but if that's what a majority says, then all for it.
Michelle?
And that is something I thought about, is the fact that I don't know that there's anybody on that committee that has that background or ability to do that. But I think if we start off with the surveys to the citizens and then they're just working from the information that's gathered, then I think that's fine. I think a better choice would be to combine other members from other committees, and including P&Z though. And I wouldn't have a problem with putting citizens on it that aren't on committees.
Okay, well, that is actually kind of that was a step forward and a step back kind of at the same time, so I want to thank you for that, for helping us push this to a final decision,
the
Michelle.
waters.
You're so helpful this evening. Okay, so we all agree that we want to have our internal committees involved in the process. I think that everybody agrees that the tree committee is a part of that process. The question is, do we include others in the process, or do we leave it exclusively to the tree committee? Mike?
I think the policy that we need to set is, who do we want to do it? And not tell them how to suck eggs, and let them do it, and the staff is there to help them. So I would make a motion that we ask the tree committee to develop a recommendation or recommendations for possible town slogans to be presented, if possible, according to the timeline that the staff has presented here.
Okay, I'm going to let Ms. Zena keep writing for just a minute longer. And then I'm going to ask her to read back kind of what she got out of what you just said, Mike, because...
And I apologize that I didn't have this in writing.
Well, nobody had it in writing, so thank you for being the wordsmith at the beginning. So, Zena? Okay, I'd probably strike the if possible, so, because we want to be action people, and if they turn it in late, then we'll give them a lower grade on their homework, but, okay, so do we have a second on the motion, including as written with the if possible? Do we have a second on that?
I'll second, I just want to,
Okay, now we're open for discussion on the actual wordsmithing of the ordinance.
So I agree with that. I just want to make sure we're not circumventing the citizens' input. It sounds like we're having the tree committee come up with the slogans. You say come up with the slogans, or just come up with ways to? Okay, but not actually. But then we'll go out to the citizens once they make those recommendations.
If I may respond, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, please do.
My intent was to just ask the tree committee to take the lead, and having had all the discussion about citizen input, that they could get citizens and involve them as they wish. Just they would be the organization to put it all together and come back.
And they would vet
to
it
us.
after they get them back.
Right. That was
Okay, I'm good.
my understanding of the communication that's gone on up here and the intent behind the motion.
Okay. And I believe that part of that involved the staff's oversight of the process, and so Bill is going to know, Bob, that is what the council's intention is. Okay, does anybody else have any discussion? Michelle?
Has anyone had any conversation with the tree committee on this? Because they may not want to do this. This isn't in their purview, and, I'm not sure even if they're an eager committee that they want to have this total responsibility. It concerns me to just put it on the tree committee without having other groups or other citizens involved.
And I doubt that anybody up here has talked to Randy Smith about this
Yeah.
as a possibility at this point.
I mean, that's my only concern, is if we haven't bothered to ask him whether or not he'd be interested, what if he says that's not something we want to do, or the committee's not? Unless Ronnie isn't volunteering to chair it when he gets it.
Randy was ignoring you.
I noticed.
Okay.
There was a question on there.
Yes.
I agree with that. I don't see why we can't just send it to them, and if they say no, then it gets kicked back to us anyway.
Okay. That is perfectly acceptable for any of our, well, other than the Planning and Zoning Commission. And I think that it's acceptable for our committees to say no. We don't want to do it. Are we all satisfied with that as an answer?
And if they don't, we can, yeah,
We
put
pick it
another
up again?
committee together. Yeah.
Exactly, it's not that this is mission critical. Okay, do we have any further discussion? If we have no further discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. The motion carries. Item 6.3, discussion action approval of environmental friendly parking concept. Bill?
Again, an objective in our budget, discussed specifically in August 2017 during a workshop. At that point in time, staff presented three options for basic conceptual consideration for possible parking support in the area south of City Hall. Just so everybody's tracking that, I know you've got it in your packet, but I'll just kind of cover. The first option that we proposed essentially, if you could go back. Okay. First option was to utilize existing rock surface with minimal topsoil and use something like bricks or railroad ties. And that was just a conceptual option discussed in August, which we didn't really have a whole lot of fidelity or other information. Second, we showed you an example of a permeable structure using plastic pavers that put pea gravel or something in it, and it was more of a roadway. It didn't really delineate the parking spaces, but it was something that we were investigating, and it was a cheaper option that was for about $16,000 to $20,000 just for the equipment. The third option, which I was, I actually thought would probably meet our requirements best, was something with grids with a permeable-based structure, which would allow you to put colored cones or something inside of the cones, which would delineate the parking spaces. So at the time, we were looking at about 20,000 square feet, and we got an estimate of the materials of $40,000 to $50,000. So, having said that, in the budget, we allocated just a little over $16,000 for what we called environmental friendly parking in the capital replacement fund. And that was the remainder of the municipal track funds that were available. So in support of that, what we did was, the first thing we did is we need to lay out how many parking spaces and what conceptually you could do based upon the trees that are there, so we wouldn't have to remove any trees. So we did a task order to KFW. They surveyed it. They surveyed our trees, looked at the minimum parking spaces, and they issued us what you see on this diagram, which is a concept for 53 parking spaces, total 2,100 square foot. And it's got an appropriate, it's not really driveway, but an access around through that. 53 parking spaces, we may be off one, really requires 66 lines. Each line would be 18 feet. And so there's a lot of ways to put lines in the sand, so to speak, or the dirt. Now, we developed two options, and I'm really trying to get guidance from you as to go big or stay small. And then we only really looked at one product, which is called True Grid, and said, okay, that is a representative of a kind of a parking, and then to buy it, and then to actually have it installed. And then we learned a little bit more about when you install it, you got to grade it, and you got to have it level, and just some other things that occur there. So looking at that, True Grid, it's called a True Grid GeoGrid installation. Again, like I said, we only contacted one bidder. He probably didn't give us I'm quoting me on this, I'll have to go back and do this, but you can see that bid was about $83,000. Included in that would require some base work, some topsoil work up to 175 tons to level that, to put this grade, this plastic grid down, and then to lay in theory, soil. Now you can do pea gravel or gravel, you can do soil. So to keep it natural, I would propose soil that you plant grass seed, and then you could see that we had a picture in there somewhere. I don't know if we have pictures of what it might look like with grass growing associated with that. So you can see also that you can mark out kind of where the parking stalls are by using these yellow plastic cones that would be inserted in a line 18 feet. So adding all that up, that's where that $82,000 came in. Now, I've been looking for an alternative that would be cheaper but also look more natural. And so actually, I've been to several parks, and I've been to several golf courses, and I got the idea. If you go to the next option with some pictures, this is a picture of a golf course where the walkway is got cedar. In one area, it's got Y post that you've got cedar railings on it. Another place where they just simply have 18-inch cedar post with a rebar stuck in the bottom of it, stuck into the ground with a hole drilled into it and rope that delineates where the marking would be. I think either way would work, and I think options for either one would work, and that part of the parking lot. So if you go back to the actual diagram, the outside perimeter of that entire parking area could be delineated with some sort of cedar post and rope, or cedar post and railing, depending on how you want it to. And then I was thinking, well, even if you put the grids in, you still might want to do some of that delineation of the outside so it's clearly marked where you actually drive and where you park, et cetera. I did some, if you go to the next pictures, go one more, there you go. In Chavano Park, this picture in the center there is actually at the Bader House, and it is a fire lane that the fire marshal worked with the architects and the building managers. They were building that. Instead of putting an asphalt road there, they've actually got, that's actually true grid type stuff there, that you have these pavers that are embedded into that, and it works pretty good. It's not driven on very often. In fact, it hadn't been driven on at all. But in case of a fire, that would be the fire lane is kept clear, and you can see conceptually how that would work. So you could do the same thing without the grids. You just have to have support. So I did a little research. I went to Home Depot, and I saw where you could put these edgings, which are about 2.5 inches. Actually, I think they're 3. They're a little bit taller. The edging is than the paver. So there would have to be some leveling and some work. But you see, it's got stakes, and you could stake each one of those pavers on each side. We did all the measurements. We know that you can get the pavers relatively cheap. I can get, with 4 pallets at $175 each, I can get all the pavers I need for $700. I would need some rebar that would be cut and then stuck in, and we would take our public works guys to do a lot of that would need to be done. The commercial grade edging is not that expensive, but because you're edging 18 feet on each side of the line, so it's really 36 feet times 66 stalls or lines. That's $4,700. And the rope and topsoil, I've given an estimate to kind of get close to that $16,000 figure. Frankly, you know, you're not really going to know it for sure until you get all the topsoil down, and that maybe you could do it without less than topsoil, or you could do it more. I had a contractor come out and give me an estimate, and it was a swag, and I added some overage into that 10% just to make sure I was kind of in the ballpark. Again, it would depend upon what was going on. The key issue with this as well, there's 2 key issues. One is getting the rebar into the ground where you have rock. He said he would take some sort of a drill operation and drill that in. The second part of either course of action is because you have a natural drainage that comes through there, we're going to have to deal with that to some degree, and it'll have to be level, but there'll have to be some indication for drainage. So again, I personally think you can do it either way. I think that option 1 is probably more conducive to a flatter area without the drainage. I think option 2 is more keeping with environmental friendly. I think both will create some challenges, but I'm willing to give it either shot either option a shot and go from there. But you've got an objective, and time is ticking.
Okay, do y'all want to open this for discussion, or do you want to open it with a motion? Let's just kind of get a, you're going to make a motion? Okay, we got a motion from Michelle.
Approve the city staff environmentally friendly parking concept option 2 with expenditures within current allocated capital reserves.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second? We have a second. We're now open for discussion. Mike?
These are more questions. One for the advocate. Once we start making a parking lot, do we therefore incur ADA obligations? I don't know. Off the top of my head, I don't. If we, now for Bill, if we build a parking lot there, the current curb cut or curb build that they have is just one lane.
Yes.
Are we going to have to beat that up and make it 2 lanes, which seems like a shame because it's less than 6 months old?
That's a good question. I asked that same question. So the engineer, in their initial proposal, had it widened into 2 lanes. And so it may be one of those things that we take a look at. I think your first question is a good question. I'll need to investigate that in terms of that, and then that may inform this second piece. I don't know. I think it's more about ingress and outgress at the same time. And there may be an alternative. If you go to the western part, there may be another way to where we can vector some of that off there. But I do think that those are 2 good questions. My initial conversation with the engineer is, can I just keep it 1 lane? He said, sure, but then you might want to widen it later on. I mean, that was kind of the exact conversation I had with him on that.
Okay. It would seem to me if we kept it 1 lane, that becomes a real traffic hazard. But the final question is, you're saying we've got runoff issues there. Once we start monkeying with the runoffs, that's Edwards Aquifer Recharge Zone, do we have to get TCEQ approval to do this? And if so, what are we looking at there?
So I wouldn't be proposing changing any of the runoff that goes off there. I do know that if, and we can ask TCEQ, but I am fairly confident, based upon the projects we've done before, that we're not putting too much impervious cover on there, which is going to then affect that. I can certainly inquire, and if there's any change to that you know, that's certainly probably more than 1 acre. Is it 0.7 acres or 1 acre, which is the key? 1 acre of disturbance. So, I mean, the total area is probably more than 1 acre. Whether or not you call that 1 acre of disturbance or not, collectively, I'm not going to answer whether I know that or not. I don't think that, this is just my gut feeling, I could be completely wrong, is that just putting pavers in there shouldn't cause a trigger, but that's a good question that I can ask.
Bill, did our engineer review options 1 and 2 or not?
Well, I didn't send him this packet per se.
Okay.
We've had conversation with him on this.
So,
I didn't ask him this question here.
but generally, he understood the idea of what you were trying to do.
Yes, I have actually, in fairly significant detail, articulated in option 2 and said that's what I intended to do.
Okay.
At that time, he did not. I say not intended to do. That's what I intended to recommend. He did not say, "Oh, you have to think about these things." So,
Okay. Mary Ann?
So we don't know whether or not yet about ADA implications. That's correct? Okay.
That would be correct. The proposal is 18. I mean, it's a standard parking space that we've approved with a few compact, all of which
It
That
may
would
just
meet
be
ADA.
you designate it and have something in terms of a walkway or a ramp, I don't know. Do we know what maintenance costs, if any, will be applicable to an environmentally friendly solution there for parking?
No, the outside perimeter would be relatively, I mean, if you had someone that ran over one of those things, that would seem to be relatively easy to go cut another cedar and install it and do all that. The real implications, if the parking spaces are in the ground and they're secured on each side by a railing, an edging, then the intent would be to build it such that you're not going to damage it if you drive on it, and as you come in and out of the parking spot. That would be the intent. And if it's, I wouldn't see how it would require a lot of damage. I mean, there's certainly, if you had heavy equipment in there, you could disrupt it, and you'd have to go repair a section of it occasionally.
Well, I guess I'm trying to just figure out, is it Public Works going to maintain it moving forward? So if we have, for example, option one, I guess is 16.5, we're not looking at that cost every year. I mean, I'm just trying to figure out if there's been any analysis done in terms of what kind of maintenance costs might be attached moving forward.
Yeah. Not specifically, because I don't know that analysis that I could do before you build it would be accurate. I mean, intuitively, you're going to have, if you have cedar poles, you're going to have to maintain that. But cedar poles last a long time unless you drive over them. I would think it'd be very minimal. If you run over a cedar pole and you bend the rebar, then that's bending it back and sticking it back in the hole.
One of the reasons why I asked that is because part of the packet shows some real pretty grass. It's very nice. Looking at the space over there and recognizing the soil that we have in many of these places, who's going to make it look like that, and how is it going to look like that, and how long is it going to look like that? Will it be able to sustain, especially given the soil and the activity that's going to be over there? That's a question, and I assume that will be some part of maintenance. The other question that I have is the area projected to be impacted at all by the work on Northwest Military? How will the new sign that has been proposed, will that have any impact on it? Maybe not. And any of the discussions regarding drainage on the Muni Tract area, how are those ideas and issues and things that we've been discussing, will it have any impact on this? And if so, what will the cost be? And then to Alderman Simpson's point about TCEQ, I think what you answered was that you don't think that there's going to be an implication with TCEQ. In the event that there's not, great. If there is, do we have an idea of what that cost might be just for a permit? Do you know?
I don't think there's a cost of significance with a permit. I think that's just an administrative procedure. So I don't know the answer to that. I certainly, if council took action and said, and if there was any red lines or anything that was then a surprise, I certainly would then not proceed forward in any of these factors. In terms of the maintenance, again, I think you're going to have to build it and see what it is. I don't anticipate. I think this option 2 is much less maintenance driven, because option 1, you got plastic grids and you got drainage and you have topsoil and you have all that. I don't think this is going to be a pretty grass thing. I think there's going to be grass growing through, and it's kind of be, while we're not watering it, and maybe we would initially if that's what we want to do to get some grass established, but I think it's going to grow over time. It's going to look like it, much like it does right now. Some of the place where there were some piles of asphalt on there, and it's you kind of got a scarred area there where it's base. When I first came here in 2017, it was exactly like that. Exactly, it was asphalt, and Lou Mintz came in with his backhoe and took that layer off and put mulch on there, and then the grass grew back on there. And it wasn't until we put those piles back on and we had the piles removed, but the residue still kind of has that base look there that nothing's growing on it. I think that's relatively easy to remove and put grass back there. That's one of the things Brenda and I have talked about, okay? It's on our list of things to do to kind of take that layer off and put topsoil or mulch to let the grass grow, make it look prettier.
Well, I guess if I understand you correctly, I mean, you're asking us to allocate taxpayer dollars for something, and the response is, let's build it and see what the outcome is. That doesn't seem to make much sense to me, or to be very accountable. And it's a little bit frustrating because we're in the middle of reviewing the town plan, putting input in, gaining input from citizens, and yet we're planning to do all this without any estimation or idea of whether there's an ADA implication, how much maintenance costs might be. I think when this was initially discussed, you know, we did put a dollar amount on it of $16K or something like that, but then the $60,000 was discussed as well, and now we're looking, and a motion has been put forward in excess of that. So it just doesn't seem all that sensible to me.
Okay, Michelle?
This has been on our agenda for years now. And while we do live in Texas and many people drive on yards and wherever to park their cars, I've had a number of residents with very expensive cars that are low to the ground complain about our lack of parking for their vehicles. Not everybody drives an SUV or something that's higher off the ground. As far as ADA, I don't know if our attorney can comment on this. Can we possibly, I mean, we're talking about the whole surrounding area, so if we needed to have more ADA parking, wouldn't we be able to add it out front instead of adding it over there where it would be difficult to maneuver on anyway?
Yeah, that's a good question, something we were looking at. I was just kind of looking at the ADA requirements right now, and that was a question that actually popped into my mind is this, would adding something here would that be, do we have an existing facility that we're just adding on to, or
Yeah.
is this a new facility? And those are all just questions I don't know the answer to.
Because I think it qualifies as existing, so we need to look into that. Also, I believe it was presented that while the diagrams show grass, there are other options of things that we can put in there, like decomposed granite or small pebbles, if we chose to go that route too. It doesn't have to be grass. And drainage, we've talked about this over and over again every time we talk about parking, and as long as we supposedly aren't changing the flow of the water and we're using the impervious or pervious, whatever it is, surface, that's not going to be an issue. That was always then what we had been told. So, you know, I still support moving forward on this, and that those are questions that I believe are answerable.
You know,
We're not talking about a
if you
cement
approve
driveway.
a motion that directs me to go out and look at option 2, I'm gonna have to then write up a task order, formally bid it. I'm gonna bring it back to city council for approval. I can, at that point in time, I can have, I mean, those are good questions. I've haven't deliberately answered them in those ways. I've thought about them in many ways, and so I'm optimistic that it'll be minimum impact, but it might be something different, and I'll be able to bring that back to council and say, okay, here's the implications to that.
Well, if I heard correctly,
Carry
part
on.
of the implication is that we have already built a curb there. That's going to have to come down? Is that
No,
right?
that's not our
That's a
curb.
possibility.
It's-
I mean, that would,
so-
you know.
I mean,
It's not
it's
our curb.
just, seems crazy. We spent money to get that done, now we're already going to tear it down?
I don't think that's our curb. That's Via's curb.
If it's not, then my
But you wouldn't
mistake.
tear it down. You could take a cut and you just cut it relatively not extreme cost, and you would just widen it out.
Mike?
The posts with the rebar, we're just sticking those in, right? They're not being anchored or concreted or anything like that?
Now, you could stick them in. You could stick them in for periods of time where you knew you had parking and you could remove it, you could keep it. I mean, at the golf course that I took those pictures of, they're permanently there.
Well, I mean, you're not going to want to put them in and then use staff to go out there and pull them all up and then put them back in again.
Not typically.
That just doesn't seem practical to me. Now, as far as the pavers, you're talking about only paving the parking stalls or the drive area as well?
Only the lines where you would delineate the left and right of a parking stall, not even the front, because that would be delineated by the rope or the railings.
Okay, so you'd be parking essentially on grass.
So the issue that we currently have is that, and we are in Texas, and a lot of places in Texas, you just park in the grass field. And the problem with what we have is because of all the way the trees are, it's not very efficient, and people don't know exactly where to park. And if you park in where you're blocking the entrance when you first come in, then that's problematic for maximizing the thing. So it's really a matter of delineating the parking stalls to be able to maximize where and how many people park. And then you have to have a traffic pattern just to be able to get them there. So the idea would be just to, really on the ground, the only footprint would be where those pavers kind of marked, kind of similar to that picture there that's up there. Now, they probably water there, so that's why it's a nice green grass. And so there'll be times when, in the summer, won't look green at all. It'll just look like whatever was in the field.
Okay, back to the TEC question. Right now, it's just a field. It's nothing. It's not parking. It's just something that we, put overflow in every once in a while. So if we delineate this thing into becoming a parking lot, auxiliary or whatever, doesn't the TECQ have some issues about parking cars in some cases over watershed where oil can leak and things like that?
I don't know the answer to that.
And it seems like we need to find out some ADA rules and some TECQ questions before we really can move on this. At least I think so. I'm not in favor of either one of these, really. The big one is too expensive, and I'm just not a big fan of this one. I think there's got to be something else. I don't know, but I mean, this is okay. But I'm not a big fan of the way it would look. I think those posts up there, when we have them out with ropes run between them, I think they're going to be trip hazards. I think they're going to be knocked over a lot. I don't know. I'm just not a big fan of that.
So I could withdraw my motion and ask that we postpone this until the next council meeting and then have the issues of the TCEQ and ADA presented to us.
Okay, I think you've made a motion to postpone consideration of this item until next month. Do I have a second on the motion to postpone? We have a second on the motion to postpone. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. The motion carries. The item is postponed until the next regular council meeting. Item 6.4, discussion action. Consider hiring a firm to conduct a 360 review of the city manager as part of his overall annual review to be conducted in April by city council. Mayor Pro Tem.
I put this item on because while I've been on council for many years and we've used this tool once before, every time we meet and do a review, one of the discussions we have is, we do it based on the goals that we establish and the charts that we create, but we don't actually have any input. We don't deal with the city manager on a daily basis. We don't know how he represents us. I mean, we do, but if we actually had feedback from those that he deals with on a daily basis, we would be better prepared to be able to give him a raise or to do a review. And the options available vary from a relatively simple process of $300 and some odd on up to $2,000. As someone suggested, we should just give him the $2,000. Well, it's hard to do a complete review and be as fair and objective if you don't have all the facts on how the city manager is performing on behalf of us with everybody that he deals with. I think, and I've talked to him about it, he's had these done before in the military. It was something that corporations use on a regular basis. We did it at USAA. That's where I got it from. The last time it was done, a citizen or a council person and one other had a subcommittee and put this together. It can be done in less than 3 weeks. It can be an simple online survey that it's decided, say 15 people, and it would be from directors to peers to staff to outside vendors, and we can decide who would be within the parameters that would give us the input that we feel would be helpful. So I'm presenting this for discussion and hopefully a recommendation.
Okay, sounds great, Michelle. Do you mind if, Bill has done a little bit of research on
Yes.
this. Do you mind if Bill amplifies on what you've just said?
Yeah, that's fine.
Bill, would you mind amplifying on what Michelle has just said?
Okay, well, like our Pro Tem has said, I've done 360 reviews in the military. I've participated in doing numerous 360 degree of peers and subordinates as well. So a 360 degree review is a good tool. It's a great tool. I have no reservation whatsoever about a 360 degree tool. I mean, I welcome feedback associated with that. In terms of the specifics, there are a number of firms. I'm not an expert of how many firms there are. I did talk to one smaller firm just to kind of get an idea how these things go. If you take a municipal 360 review that's on the shelf, then you basically are talking about core competencies that you're asking superiors, maybe council, peers, typically 360, and subordinates, stakeholders, to do a review. And I don't know, I wouldn't have ever seen a municipal 360, but I would imagine it would be about leadership, ability to communicate, responsiveness, these kinds of things which you're going to get some feedback on. Mentoring, consistent predictability, trust, something to that nature. So if you are going to pull a existing one off the shelf and then it's, this one person I talked to said, well, yeah, I've got one, and, you take the survey, you typically send it to 14 people up and down this thing, and you provide the email result, email addresses to this company. They send out the survey with a link, and then the survey's done. It usually takes a couple of weeks to get it in, and then they have all those results go to somebody that is what they call an a coach or a mentor. I don't know what the right term is because I had that conversation, but typically that results is shared with the rated individual. And the intent is to provide him a view of this is what superiors that you've worked for have said about you, your peers have said about you, your subordinates have said about you. What does this mean? How might you use it? And you're providing that rated officer the tools associated with that. What you're talking about is using it as another evaluation tool. If you've done that before, then it's been done before. It's typically not what it's done. It's usually done and then given to that rater, but I'm not hesitant to do it either way. So that's all I know of it. I haven't done a whole lot of research on it, but it was your agenda item, and that's what
Yes, I appreciate that. So I'd like to open it for discussion. I can make a motion and suggest that one or two council people be involved in pulling the process together and working with, because obviously we wouldn't have the city manager do it himself, working with the firm and determining what firm we use, I don't think we need to spend $2,000 to do it. I think it can give us good information that we can then use in our evaluation process. Because one of the things that I've noted in evaluating is that we have often a wide range of how we evaluate and what we do with our numbers. And I think this would give us another tool that we could all hopefully agree on that would give us information and give us more of a base that we can use for making determinations on salary and performance and rating and whatnot.
Okay, I'm going to ask that before you make your motion, that you consider the amount that we're going to be spending, and maybe Bill could give you some guidance on how much he's seen, at least from the group that he's talked to, so that you have a range of costs that you might be thinking about in your motion.
I was going to say no more than 750.
Is that a doable number from your research, Bill?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So we have a recommendation that, are you going to recommend the two council members as well?
I would like the council members to volunteer. I mean, I will volunteer if needed, but if there were two other people that were interested, I'm fine with that. And there would be two council members that would work on this and determine what firm to use and not spend more than $750.
Okay. We have a motion to, for two council members to implement a 360 review of the city manager at a cost not to exceed $750. Do I have a second? We have a second from Mike Colmier, and now we're open for discussion. Bob.
So the company I work for, we do a lot of these surveys for managers, for executives, for all of the field folks as well, and I think it is very useful. I'm a little, I guess my only concern is the financial aspect of it and how much time it'll take, but I think we've answered some of that. I guess one question I'd have is can this not be done internally? Do we have to hire a corporation to actually administer that? Is that the only way to do it, or could we, the committee that we're putting together, could we operate through that?
I think it's better to use the corporation because then it makes it totally autonomous and they do it, and it's more fair because then if we know and we know who we're contacting and then we get the results back, I don't think that that's as, we'll have the good results as if we had a third party do it.
Okay, well, I'm satisfied with that. I was not a fan of $2,000 for this.
No.
Are we firm that $750 will get this done?
Yes,
Bill?
and maybe less.
Bill, when you answered that question earlier, what's the $750, we can get this done?
If you take something, well, first of all, there is a time factor. I mean, unless you take something off the shelf, you're probably not going to get it done in the time period you're talking about. If you take something off the shelf, then it's cheaper.
Yeah.
And so then it's a matter of, this guy quoted me about $300 or something if you're using 14 people, and of course, you do your self-evaluation, then you really compare how you see yourself with how other people see you, right? And so the more people you add, the higher the cost, but I don't have a feel for exponentially what that is.
But
Okay.
14 was the number that they used, okay.
That was the base. And
That's the base, okay.
Okay, do we have any other questions? Mary Ann?
Maybe this is a question the city attorney can answer. How many other municipalities use 360-degree reviews?
So to my knowledge, at least one city that I'm aware of uses it on a fairly regular basis.
I guess I could understand, is there a concern about performance here? Is this why we're looking at doing a 360?
it doesn't have to be about a concern. I mean, we did them at USA for everybody. It's a tool that you use so that you can see how, we have no idea unless we go and talk to people how he's doing in the corporation, outside of the corporation, with people he represents. And I'm not saying he's doing a bad job. I'm just saying it could be glowing, it could be not, I don't know.
I'm not saying you are either. I was just wondering if there was a concern, because I might be able to see outsourcing this to get some additional input if there had been some issues or concerns about performance. I mean, this body is tasked with basically three things: policy, budget, and overseeing the performance of the city manager, and that's it. I don't know why we would be wanting to outsource this piece of what we do at any cost. And if we're talking about $800, I don't know the people that are going to be looking at doing this, but at $200 an hour, that's maybe 4 hours worth of work. I don't know how much ability to gain some insight they might be able to get.
I will tell you, it was extremely useful when we did it before.
And when we did it before, why did we do it before? Was there an issue with performance?
Well, there was an issue with performance, but it gave us information that the council could not get without doing that. And I think, and the whole thing about doing it internally is that it's one thing, I think, if you have an organization, although they would never do this, but if you have an organization like USA with 20,000 people, that's a lot different than you have an organization with less than 50. So they're going to formulate the questions and set it up so that it doesn't, I used to be in departments that had 2 and 3 people, and then people would fill in stuff on the surveys and they would come back and you knew exactly who wrote it, and then that was a bad thing. So going to a third party and having them administer it and handle it is, makes it blind, and I think it will elicit more open comments.
Well, and I get that for a private company or a bigger outfit that is not a public entity. I mean, we're a community that is subject to the Public Information Act and Open Meetings Act, and everything that we do is open to review by residents and citizens. And so how we feel about the city manager's performance is something that interested residents have a right to know. So I'm not a big fan of this. I don't understand the impetus for it. I could see possibly a need for it if there was an issue with performance that we wanted to get some additional input on. But I don't see the need for it, but that's just me.
Mike Simpson.
Question, if we pass this motion, do 2 city council members have the authority to bind the city in a contract?
Well, no. Yeah.
I didn't have my microphone on. Council, unless council gives them that authority, no. How about that?
Okay. And just an observation before I talk about my views on the whole idea, is that if we appoint 2 city council members to do this, they will be required by our minute order from last year to post their meetings and to hold the meetings to figure out what they're doing in a public area. So just that reminder. And then I would speak against the idea. I concur with Alderwoman Heisel that our responsibilities basically boil down to policy, budget, and ensuring that the city manager does what he's supposed to do, and then review him on that. And if we can't do that, then shame on us. From what I know of 360 reviews, they're primarily to help the individual do his job better, not to help take the place of a rater or reviewing official to come up with a rating. So I would speak against the concept and motion on that philosophical ground. And also, if we're going to do this, then I do not see how we can get it done before the next council meeting, which is when, in our next item, we're supposed to rate the city manager. I just don't see how we can get it all done. If it's something council wants to do, then I would commend it for the next rating period, and when there's time to do it right and incorporate the results in a rational way into the manager's review. So I would speak against the motion.
Okay. Do we have anybody? Mike Coleman.
Well, trying to collect my thoughts here. I think if this is something that's going to be the way we're going to do it from this time forward, I think I could support that. If we're just talking about just one instance, I don't think it's worth it. I've never been involved in one of these. I've never valued anybody. I've been fortunate enough in my career to be the guy that would be reviewed. But then I paid all the bills and called all the shots. I don't know if this is going to be something that we could incorporate with our own views and everything. That's fine. I'm the new guy here. I've only been here a year, and to be honest with you, I've had extremely arm's distance with the city manager. I just haven't had that much occasion to have anything to do with it. I've looked at some of the questions on the next agenda item. Some of those, to be quite honest with you, I would have a hard time even feeling comfortable giving an answer. So I'm not sure that this is, I've never been involved in one of these. I don't really know what it is. On the surface, it sounds fine. If it can, too much information may be a bad thing, but you can always use information if the city manager is okay with it. But I think this is something that needs to be, from this day forward, it should always be done this way. We would always have a 360 review if this is what it's going to be, and not just we're just doing it just now, because I personally don't think there is any problem, but that's just my thoughts. It's something that I'm just not really all that comfortable with. I just don't know enough about it.
Okay, Michelle?
And then your point is exactly one of the points that I'm making, is that you wouldn't feel comfortable answering questions because you don't have the interaction with him, and others do, and this is a way to get that feedback. And I have no problem with continuing to do this, and I think it can be a tool for the city manager, and not specifically Bill, but any city manager to use. I honestly found them very effective where we were at USAA, and you can say we're a small city, but we are a high-end city that people expect certain things from, and they want certain kinds of performance. And if we give them a city manager and support a city manager that does that, and we get all the tools that we can to get that information, I think that they would support that, and that's a great thing for us.
Bob?
Well, I would say, first and foremost, I think Bill's doing a very good job. I don't think this has anything to do with performance right now. I think, and Mr. Simpson brought this up, because how it's used in my corporation situation is how to give feedback to improve the performance. And I think all of us would be welcome to feedback for performance improvement, not this year, but every year. And I think that's the way that I look at this. And I think it is true that it needs to be something that we implement going forward for every city manager, and hopefully Bill will be that guy for a long time to come. Every year we do the review process as a council. Since I've been on council, we stumble and try to figure out, we never agree on the right process. We never agree on what the right feedback is. And I know when we set up the objectives with Bill, we sit down and we go over those objectives, but those are his objectives that he has for himself, our objectives that we have for him, and we don't really encompass all these other things that we're talking about that would be very helpful to help Bill continue building his his career and his performance. And as I said earlier, I think he does a phenomenal job. So I think anyone would welcome that. So that's the way I look at it. Now, I will say, if this is going to impede the process, if we're in a time frame constraint and we can't do this in a way that needs to be done correctly in the time frame that we have, then that may be a little different situation that we need to review.
And that's not a problem.
Sure.
We can get it done. If we pick people today to do it, we can do it. We will use an on-the-shelf product, and we can get it done. I've spoken to 3 different people about it, 3 different companies.
Okay. Mary Ann?
I guess the question that I have is, or a couple of comments. Number one, we're not USAA. We're not the city of San Antonio. We're not an outfit that has an organization personal need for something like that. We are a high-end community, small enough such that if anybody on city staff is not performing, you're going to hear about it. And you don't need a third-party outfit to tell you. If there is not an issue with performance, I don't understand why we're changing the performance evaluation process midstream like this. He's been here 4+ years now, a little over. And in terms of the reviews, we may not always agree on the outcome, but that's part of having 5 different voices up here. You know, everybody's going to have their point of view in terms of interactions, and so that's all I would say. And I guess the other question I have is, what does TML advise in terms of doing a performance review for a city manager? And do we have any of that information? I'm not a fan of this, but, you know, we may vote tonight and go from there.
Okay. Bill, do you want to add anything before I ask which council members might actually be willing to participate in the process? Because if we need at least 2 members of council to be participating. But do you have anything on TML? Mary Ann had a question about that.
TML, to my knowledge, has not ever addressed 360. Their evaluation form is like 8 pages long, and it's very cumbersome. I don't know. I mean, that goes into speaking of the 5th different form or the 4th different form I've had since we've been here. So that's why that, well, anyway, I'll just.
Yeah, I was going to say, we've changed forms every
Mike?
year.
Just procedurally, I think we would need to pass the motion before we seek someone to serve on it. But before that, I would point out that I think it's inherently unfair to change the rating plan at the last minute. Bill has spent the year working with a rating scheme that we adopted last year, and he's proposed it again this year. Everyone should know what it was. It worked pretty well last year, even though there were some disagreements on the particulars, but it worked well. I think it's inherently unfair to say, okay, we're going to change how we're going to do that after the last 11 months of anticipating that we were going to rate him according to the policy that we adopted last year. So I would once again speak against it and say, if this is something that's sound, let's talk about it during the budget cycle and adopt it in the budget. There's no place in the budget for it, and go for it going forward. But the last minute nature of this is just speaks against it for me.
Okay. Let's see if we can't wrap up our comments.
Okay,
So
yeah,
that-
we've changed the form that we've used and the process we've used almost every year that I've been on council. So the fact that we would add a tool now, and the fact that I discussed it with the city manager and he doesn't have a problem with it, would indicate to me that that's something we could move forward on.
Okay, Mike Colmer.
Well, as I said, I'm not familiar with this process that much to begin with, but in light of Mr. Simpson's comments, I think that's probably a good move. Let's put it into budget and then put it into something that we do going forward from here now, instead of changing it at the last minute.
Okay. We've had our discussion. Bob, you want to say one thing?
So I am not completely married to this process. I think it is a very good process, but what I will say is that I don't think it replaces the review process that's in place. I think if we do this, not just this year, but going forward, it's a feedback option to help give feedback to the city manager and improve. I don't think it's information, unless I'm mistaken, it's something that will completely change how we're rating him this year.
Right, it's not.
Overall, it's feedback to help give the city manager to improve his performance, but I don't think it's something that replaces the process that's in place. So I look at it a little bit differently than what was stated earlier, but but again, it's something, obviously it's controversial, but I think it could be helpful, in the process.
Okay. So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. The motion fails, 3-2, or 2-3. Item 6.5, discussion action, set city manager annual performance and salary review for April. This is my item. We have a calendar that has been provided. We have an evaluation form that we used last year, which was modified somewhat from the year before, but something of a continuation of our prior activities. And I would propose that we use the same format and the same schedule, or use the recommended schedule provided for by the city manager in our package. And I'm going to open that up for a motion.
I move that we adopt the calendar as set out, barring any problems with anybody's calendar, to complete the city manager annual review on time.
Do I have a second?
Second.
And we have a second. Do we have any discussion? Mike?
I apologize, Mr. Mayor. Normally, I would look this up on my tablet, but my tablet's not connecting to the internet. Can you show that timeline here, Bill? As a part of your?
It's part of the package.
I
No, I mean,
understand,
he
Mr.
can,
Mayor,
he
but
can
it's not
tap
coming
through
up.
it.
Yeah.
He can tap through it to get it to us. Went too far.
So April 3rd is a Monday, is a Tuesday.
Brandon, you're going the wrong direction. You're probably going to be around page 50.
Yeah, April 3rd is a Tuesday, so it gives me a week to put together a list of significant accomplishments, which I haven't
A little bit
started,
too
but
far.
that shouldn't be too hard. And then essentially, that gives 2 weeks to.
Like 45.
The 16th would be a Monday, which would be 13 days later, which the alderman would then complete the review and pass it to the mayor. The mayor then would begin assembling of the presentations on the 17th. He would have 3 days to assemble them, which I think is just making copies and disseminating them back to the alderman so the alderman can review, and then we have the city council meeting on the 23rd. Don't you have an app that's like outside of this, right? Go close everything out and look at the
Thank you,
regular
Mr. Mayor.
calendar.
That gave me the information I needed.
Okay. Do we have any further discussion?
And most of it is just deadlines by which we
It
need
is
to get
just
you
deadlines.
information. Then we have the
That's right.
meeting, and if that's fair for everyone, then we know what those dates are and we
There are
comply.
the dates. Okay. There being no further discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. The motion carries. Brings us to item 7. All matters listed under this item are considered routine by the city council and will only be considered at the request of one or more aldermen. Coincident with each listed item, discussion will generally occur. Does anybody have anything they'd like to discuss in item 7? Okay, item 8. All matters listed under this item are considered routine by city council and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion on these items. If discussion is desired by any alderman on any item, that item will be removed from the consent agenda and will be considered separately. Do I have a motion to consider, to approve and/or accept items 8.1 through 8.6?
So moved.
I have a motion from Alderman Simpson to accept or approve items 8.1 through 8.6. Do I have a second? We have a second from Bob. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. The motion carries. Brings us to item number 9, a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
A motion to adjourn from Michelle. I have a second from Mike Simpson. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. The motion carries. We're adjourned.